If we cannot find out her secret, we should ruin what she has. It's the only way.
But they continued inside, carrying the new, more dangerous potion. Anya poured it into Sarah's shampoo bottle, her hands shaking with both excitement and fear.
There,
she whispered fiercely.
This will teach her to stop being so perfect.
Once upon a time, in a vibrant village, there lived a young woman named Sarah. Sarah was known far and wide for her exceptionally long and beautiful hair that cascaded down to her feet like a waterfall of midnight silk. Her hair was dark, shiny, and smooth. Whenever the wind blew, her hair would dance around her like a graceful wave, capturing the attention of everyone who saw her. Sarah was a simple girl who lived with her grandmother in a small hut at the edge of the village. She spent her days helping her grandmother with chores, tending to the garden, and fetching water from the river. But wherever she went, her hair would follow, swaying with every step she took. The men of the village would often stop and stare, their eyes wide with admiration. They would whisper among themselves, saying, "Have you seen Sarah's hair? It's more beautiful than the finest cloth or the richest jewel." The women, however, did not share the same admiration. While Sarah was kind and friendly to everyone, the village women began to feel a pang of jealousy growing in their hearts. They noticed how their husbands' eyes would follow Sarah whenever she walked by. They'd heard their husbands speak about her hair with such awe that it made them feel as if their own beauty was being overshadowed by Sarah's long, flowing locks. One by one, the seeds of envy began to sprout, and the women started to grumble among themselves, saying, "Why do the men only see her hair? Are we not beautiful enough for them?" Sarah's long, lustrous hair was not just a random gift from nature. It had a story, a deep and ancient one that was passed down through generations in her family. One evening, Sarah sat outside her small hut with her grandmother, who was busy weaving a colorful mat. Her grandmother noticed the look of curiosity in Sarah's eyes. "What's on your mind, child?" "Grandmother," Sarah began, "why is my hair so different from everyone else's? People keep talking about it, and some of the women in the village look at me strangely. I don't understand why." "Ah, my dear Sarah, it is time you learn about the gift that runs in our family," she said. "Your hair is not just hair. It is a blessing from our ancestors, long ago, in a time when the world was young and the spirits of the earth were still close to the people. Our ancestors were known for their kindness and their deep connection with nature. One of our great-great-grandmothers was a healer, a woman of great wisdom who knew the secrets of the plants and the earth. She used her knowledge to help the people of the village, curing their ailments and bringing peace to their hearts. One day, her grandmother continued, the spirits of the land, pleased with her kindness and her good heart, decided to bless her with a gift. They gave her hair that was long, strong, and beautiful. Her hair would grow as long as her spirit was pure, and it would shine as bright as the goodness in her heart. Sarah listened with wide eyes, her hand gently touching her own hair as she began to understand. "So, my hair is a gift from the spirits, too?" she asked softly. "Yes, my child," her grandmother replied, nodding. "Your hair is a symbol of the love, but remember, Sarah, with great beauty comes great responsibility. You must always be kind, and never let vanity take root in your heart, for the spirits give, but can also take away." Sarah nodded, feeling a new sense of pride and understanding about her hair. The night grew darker. Sarah's grandmother took her hand and whispered a prayer to the spirits. She hoped that they would protect her dear granddaughter from any harm that might come her way. But in the hearts of some village women, a dangerous plan was already beginning to take shape, a plan that would soon put Sarah's promise of kindness and the strength of her ancestors to the test. The days continued to pass, and the admiration for Sarah's beautiful hair only grew stronger among the men of the village. Every time she walked through the market with her basket of fruits or went to fetch water from the river, the men could not help but gaze at her with awe. Some would even follow her with their eyes until she disappeared from view, murmuring to one another about the beauty of her hair. "She looks like a queen from an old story," one man would say. "If only my wife had such hair," another would exclaim. These whispers and comments did not go unnoticed by the women of the village. The more the men talked about Sarah, the more the women began to feel something bitter rise within them. It started as a small pang of jealousy, but soon grew into a gnawing feeling that clung to their hearts. When they were alone, the village women would gather in small groups, whispering among themselves. "Why do our husbands only talk about Sarah?" One woman grumbled, her arms crossed tightly over her chest. "Do they not see us, their own wives, standing right beside them?" Another woman nodded in agreement, her face tight with frustration. "I have tried everything to make my hair look like hers. I used all the oils and herbs, but nothing works. My husband even bought a special comb, hoping it would help, but still nothing." The more they talked, the angrier they became. They began to blame Sarah for the attention their husbands were giving her, even though Sarah had done nothing wrong. "She must be doing something special," another woman whispered, her voice filled with suspicion. "Perhaps she uses some secret potion or magic to make her hair look like that." "But where would she get such magic?" another woman asked, her eyes narrowing with thought. They decided they would watch Sarah closely, trying to learn her secrets. They would find out what made her hair so different, and if they couldn't replicate it, they would find a way to take it away from her. The women began to follow Sarah, watching her every move. They saw how she would gather herbs from the forest and fetch water from the clear river. They watched her comb her hair in the morning sun, humming a tune as she worked. But no matter how hard they tried, they could not discover her secret. One day, as they gathered near the well, one of the women, a particularly bitter one named Anya, finally spoke up. "Enough of this waiting and watching," she said sharply. "We all know it's the way she cares for her hair that makes it so beautiful. If we cannot find out her secret, we should ruin what she has. It's the only way." The other woman gasped, shocked at the boldness of her words. But deep down, they felt a spark of agreement. Their jealousy had clouded their hearts so much that they began to see Sarah not as the kind girl she was, but as a rival, a threat to their own beauty and happiness. "How will we do it?" asked another woman cautiously. "We will sneak into her home and put something in her shampoo," Anya suggested with a sly grin. "Something that will make her hair fall out. That way, our husbands will stop talking about her, and things will go back to normal." A murmur of agreement spread among the women, and though some felt a pang of guilt, they pushed it aside. Their jealousy had taken root too deeply, and they were determined to carry out their plan. Little did they know, they were about to set in motion events that would teach them all a lesson they would never forget. The sun began to set over the village. The women made their way home, each one of them preparing for the night when they would put their secret plan into action. Meanwhile, Sarah, unaware of the brewing storm, continued to go about her day with her usual grace and kindness, her long, beautiful hair flowing behind her like a river of midnight. The spirits that watched over her, however, sensed the growing darkness in the hearts of the village women. They whispered in the wind and rustled in the leaves, trying to warn Sarah, but she was too caught up in her daily tasks to notice. A great test was coming, one that would challenge not only her but also the very heart of the village itself. That night, as the village lay silent under the cover of darkness, the women made their move. One by one, they crept through the shadows, their faces hidden by scarves. Sarah's small hut was at the edge of the village, nestled among tall grass and wildflowers. She and her grandmother were fast asleep, unaware of the danger creeping closer. The women tiptoed to the side of the hut and carefully pushed open the wooden door, which creaked loudly in the stillness of the night. They held their breath, listening for any sound from inside. When they heard none, they moved quietly into the dimly lit interior. They found Sarah's shampoo bottle sitting on a small wooden shelf. Anya took out a small pouch of powder she had prepared, a mixture of harsh, unknown herbs and chemicals that would surely ruin Sarah's beautiful hair. She poured the powder into the bottle, shaking it well to mix it thoroughly. "Let's go," she whispered urgently. The women quickly left the hut, their hearts racing with a mix of excitement and fear. They had done it. Now all they had to do was wait. The next morning, the village was buzzing with life as usual. The men gathered to discuss the latest village news, while the women went about their chores, pretending as if nothing had happened the night before. However, their eyes were secretly on Sarah, waiting to see what would happen when she used her shampoo. Sarah woke up, feeling refreshed and ready to start her day. As usual, she prepared to wash her hair, unaware of the danger lurking in the bottle on her shelf. She hummed a soft tune, poured some of the shampoo into her hands, and began to wash her long, beautiful hair. At first, everything seemed normal. The shampoo lathered up nicely, and the familiar scent of herbs filled the air. But as Sarah rinsed it off, she noticed something felt different. Her scalp began to tingle uncomfortably, and her hair felt strangely heavy. Confused, she continued to rinse, thinking it might be a trick of her imagination. But when she looked down, she saw clumps of her hair coming loose in her hands. Her heart skipped a beat, and her breath caught in her throat. Panic set in as more and more hair began to fall out, swirling around her feet in the water. She quickly finished rinsing and ran her fingers through her hair, feeling the uneven patches where hair was missing. Tears filled her eyes as she realized something terrible had happened. Her beautiful hair, the gift from her ancestors, was falling out, and she didn't know why. She called out to her grandmother, who rushed in to see what was wrong. "Oh, Sarah!" Her grandmother gasped, seeing the hair on the ground and the fear in her granddaughter's eyes. "What has happened?" "I don't know, grandmother," Sarah sobbed. "I was just washing my hair like I always do, but it started falling out." Her grandmother's face grew serious as she bent down to pick up a strand of the fallen hair. She examined it closely and smelled the air, her eyes narrowing with suspicion. "There is something strange in the air," she said quietly. "Smell a foul scent, something unnatural." Meanwhile, the women of the village pretended to go about their day, but they were secretly watching Sarah's every move. When they saw her running out of her hut with tears streaming down her face, they knew their plan had worked. Some of them felt a twinge of guilt, but others, like Anya, only felt a twisted sense of satisfaction. Their husbands, however, noticed the change in Sarah's appearance. They saw how her once beautiful hair now hung unevenly, patches missing and clumps gone. They began to murmur among themselves, wondering what could have happened. Some of them even approached Sarah to ask if she was all right, but she just shook her head, too heartbroken to speak. The admiration that the men had for Sarah's hair began to turn to sympathy, and they praised her even more for her strength and spirit, unaware of the wicked plot that had been carried out by their own wives. "We have to do more," Anya insisted. "She still walks around like she is better than us. This is not over." But the other women were starting to feel the weight of their guilt. They were beginning to understand that they had let their jealousy drive them to a dark place, and it did not feel good at all. Despite the loss of her hair and the pain she felt, Sarah remained kind and gracious. She did not blame anyone or lash out in anger. She knew that hair could grow back, but a kind heart must always stay pure. One day, while she was helping an old woman carry her basket from the market, The woman looked at her and said, "Sarah, you have lost your beautiful hair, but you have not lost your beautiful spirit. That is why you are loved." These words touched Sarah's heart, and she realized that true beauty was indeed more than what was on the outside. Meanwhile, the village women noticed that despite her hair loss, Sarah remained strong and kind. This confused them, for they had expected her to be devastated, perhaps even to leave the village in shame. They began to realize that there was something about Sarah that was more powerful than her hair, something they could not destroy with their envy. Despite the regret beginning to grow in some of the women's hearts, Anya remained relentless. She called for another meeting under the baobab tree, her eyes blazing with anger. "We need to finish what we started," she hissed. "We didn't do enough to take away her shine. Her kindness is still making our husbands look at her with those eyes." The other women were hesitant. "But Anya," one of them spoke softly, "look at her. She has lost so much already. Maybe it's time we stopped. We've done enough harm." Anya glared at them, her face twisting with frustration. "If we stop now, everything will go back to the way it was. They'll pity her even more, and she'll still be the center of their attention. Do you want that?" Anya decided they needed something more powerful, something that would not only ruin Sarah's hair, but maybe even force her to leave the village altogether. She concocted a new potion with even stronger, more dangerous ingredients that could potentially harm Sarah. She didn't care what happened as long as Sarah was gone. The women waited for another night when the moon was dark and the village was asleep. This time, however, the spirits were watching more closely. The wind howled louder than before, and the trees seemed to bend under the weight of the stormy sky. As they reached Sarah's hut, they prepared to slip in again. But this time, something strange happened. The door, which had creaked open so easily before, now felt heavy and unyielding. Anya pushed harder, and finally it gave way with a loud, eerie groan. The women shivered, but they continued inside, carrying the new, more dangerous potion. Anya poured it into Sarah's shampoo bottle, her hands shaking with both excitement and fear. "There," she whispered fiercely. "This will teach her to stop being so perfect." They slipped back out into the night, feeling the weight of their actions settling heavily on their shoulders. The spirits watched from the shadows, whispering warnings that went unheard by the women's clouded hearts. The next morning, Sarah woke up with a feeling of unease. She couldn't explain it, but the air felt heavy, and the world seemed quieter than usual. Still, she tried to brush off the feeling and started her morning routine. She picked up the shampoo bottle and noticed something strange. The liquid inside looked different, thicker, and it had a strange smell that made her nose wrinkle. Her grandmother, who had been watching her closely, immediately sensed something was wrong. "Sarah," she said with concern, "do not use that shampoo. I feel a bad spirit around it." Sarah trusted her grandmother's instincts and decided to set the bottle aside. She didn't know what was wrong, but she felt the same unease. She instead used some of the natural herbs her grandmother kept for washing hair. As she worked, she noticed that no more hair fell out, and the tingling sensation from the last wash had disappeared. The women of the village, who were eagerly watching from a distance, waited for something dramatic to happen. But when they saw Sarah walking out of her hut with her usual smile, their hearts sank. Anya, especially, felt anger boiling inside her. How did she survive that? She muttered, her face twisted in disbelief. The women started to whisper among themselves. "Perhaps the spirits are protecting her," one said. "Maybe we should stop before things get worse." But Anya wasn't ready to give up. She was determined to see Sarah suffer, no matter what. Little did she know, her actions were not going unnoticed by the spirits who watched over the village. After the near disaster with the shampoo, Sarah began to feel a strange sense of unease wherever she went. She noticed that some of the women in the village avoided her gaze, while others whispered among themselves and looked away whenever she approached. It was as if they were hiding something from her, something dark and secret. She also began to feel a presence around her, a sensation that something was watching over her, but she couldn't tell if it was good or bad. Her grandmother, sensing the shift in the air, grew more protective. She decided it was time to call upon the ancestors for guidance and protection. One night, under the light of a full moon, Sarah and her grandmother sat around a small fire in front of their hut. Her grandmother chanted softly, calling upon the spirits of their ancestors, asking for their wisdom and protection. The fire crackled, and the flames danced as if responding to her call. Suddenly, a cool breeze swept through the clearing, and the flames flickered higher. Sarah closed her eyes and listened to the rustling of the leaves and the whispers of the wind. The next morning, when Sarah woke up, she felt a renewed sense of strength. She knew she had to find out what was happening in the village and why she felt so uneasy. She decided to look for clues and listen carefully to what people were saying. She had a feeling that something was very wrong, and she was determined to get to the bottom of it. Sarah's grandmother decided it was time to give Sarah a protective charm. "Sarah," her grandmother said, placing the amulet around her neck, "this charm carries the blessing of our ancestors. It will protect you from harm, but you must also be strong in your heart. Trust in your goodness, and do not let anger or fear take root." Sarah nodded. As the days went by, Sarah continued to notice the strange behavior of the village women. She realized that whatever had happened to her hair was not an accident, but the result of someone's deliberate actions. Determined to uncover the truth, Sarah prayed to her ancestors once more, asking for guidance. That night, she had a vivid dream where the spirits of her ancestors spoke to her, revealing the truth behind the women's actions. She saw images of the women sneaking into her home, pouring something into her shampoo, and she felt a deep sense of betrayal and sadness. But instead of feeling anger, Sarah woke up feeling a strong sense of purpose. She knew she had to confront the women and find a way to bring peace back to the village. She put on her protective charm, the one her grandmother had given her, and set out towards the village square. When Sarah reached the village square, she took a deep breath and spoke, her voice calm but firm. "I have come to speak with you," she began. "I know that something happened to my hair, something that wasn't natural. I have felt it in my heart and seen it in my dreams. I do not know why you would do this to me, but I want to understand." The women were silent, their faces filled with a mix of fear, guilt, and confusion. They hadn't expected Sarah to confront them so directly, and certainly not with such calmness and grace. Anya, who had been the ringleader of the plot, felt a knot tighten in her stomach. She had never imagined Sarah would face them this way. She tried to act brave, but her voice trembled as she spoke. We didn't mean for things to go so far," she stammered. "We just wanted our husbands to stop admiring you so much. We didn't think." "You didn't think what?" Sarah interrupted gently. "That I would be hurt. That this would make things better for you." The women's faces flushed with shame. They knew Sarah was right. The confrontation had drawn a small crowd, and soon enough, the men of the village, including their husbands, gathered around to see what was happening. The women could feel their husbands' eyes on them, and shame burned in their hearts. One of the husbands, a kind man named Juma, stepped forward, his face a mixture of confusion and disappointment. "Is it true?" he asked, looking directly at his wife. "Did you all do this to Sarah?" Anya, seeing the shame and regret in the faces of her fellow conspirators, knew the truth could no longer be hidden. She took a deep breath and finally admitted, "Yes, it is true. We were jealous of her hair and the way you all admired it." We thought if we could ruin it, everything would go back to the way it was." The men shook their heads, not in anger, but in sorrow. They could not understand why their wives, who they loved dearly, would let jealousy lead them to such lengths. "I understand how you felt," Sarah said softly. "But I want you to understand that true beauty is not just in what we see. It is in how we treat each other, in the kindness and love we show. I have no anger in my heart towards you. Instead, I offer you forgiveness. Let us learn from this and be better together." The women began to cry openly, overwhelmed by Sarah's grace and forgiveness. They realized that they had been wrong, not only to try and harm her, but to let jealousy blind them to the goodness that Sarah had always shown. What do you do if you're in Sarah's place? Would you also forgive everyone or take revenge? Share your thoughts in comments below. Also, don't forget to subscribe or like the story. Thank you.